Thanks for joining us today. I think we'll go ahead and get started, and as people jump in, they can get caught up. I want to introduce myself. My name is Christine Fife, and I am going to be our guide through this conversation today. I'm the communications manager for the Clearwater Junction intersection project, and I'm always going to be your point of contact. So if you have any questions or comments after this presentation or throughout this study, I'm happy to respond to those, and I'll share my contact information at the end of this presentation. This will be a short presentation with the primary focus of providing some information about why we are conducting this study, the process that's used for evaluating alternatives, and the results of that process. Joining me this afternoon are Bob Vosen, Jacqueline Smith, Tricia Burke, and Cameron Cloberdance from the Montana Department of Transportation, and April Girth of Robert Pitch and Associates. Would you all take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Christine. I'm Bob Vosen. I'm the district administrator for the Montana Department of Transportation's District 1, which is generally Western Montana. Jacqueline?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Smith, and I am the District 1 pre-construction engineer. So I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this open house today.
Hi, I'm Tricia Burke. I'm the safety engineer, and I'm centered out of Helena. And my program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, is the funding source for this project. Cameron?
Hello, I'm Cameron Cloberdance. I work with MDT, and on this project, I coordinate the communication and effort between MDT personnel and the consultants. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for being here today. I'm April Girth from Robert Pitch and Associates, the consulting firm hired by MDT to assist in analyzing and design of the intersection.
Thank you. I also want to introduce Katie Cleets. She's also from Big Sky Public Relations. She'll be monitoring any questions or comments that come through their Q&A system. Katie, could you take a moment to introduce yourself and let us know how that Q&A process will work?
Yes, thanks, Christine. Hello, everyone. I'm Katie, as Christine said, from Big Sky PR. When we get to the end of the presentation, we will be going through and answering any of the questions that you put into the Q&A system. So in order to ask the team a question or to provide a comment, please use the Q&A system at the bottom of your screen. It looks like 2 chat bubbles. We'll have the opportunity to review any of those written comments, and then I will pose them to the group and we'll have the conversation from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And again, my name is Christine, and I'll share my contact information at the end of this presentation. I also want to mention that we will be recording this meeting, and it will be made available for viewing after we're finished today on the project webpage. We really appreciate everyone who's taken time to be with us today. And now I just want to turn some time over to Bob to get us started.
Thanks, Christine. Excuse me. So to start with, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to join us today, hear about our plans and what's coming forward with the Clearwater Junction. The Montana Department of Transportation has a Vision Zero, which is a goal of 0 deaths and 0 serious injuries on Montana's roadways. And to make a significant impact on fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads, we need the 5th E, which is everyone. We have education, enforcement, emergency services, and engineering resources available for us, but all of those aren't going to help us to get to our goal of Vision Zero without every Montanan and everyone traveling on Montana's roads doing their part. We need everyone to pay attention as they're driving. We need everyone to wear their seatbelts. We need everyone to not drink and drive. And we need everyone to work together to help allow everyone to make it home to their family at the end of the day. So our goal of this project is to help bring that Vision Zero to reality and the Clearwater Junction crash frequency to 0. So this is just another key component in the ultimate goal of Vision Zero. An overview of the Clearwater Junction, I'm sure all of you recognize the intersection of Highway 83 and Highway 200, commonly known as Clearwater Junction. This is a major connection point between the communities of Helena, Missoula, Kalispell, and all the other small towns in between and around the area. This is a major thoroughfare for many commercial and industrial vehicles, and obviously a tremendous amount of recreational vehicles and recreational travelers use this intersection. The intersection is also home to one of the most frequently visited boat check stations in Montana. We've got a weigh station you can see off to the right-hand side, and a very busy convenience store, and also a rest area. So there's a lot going on at this intersection, a lot of travelers through the area. So we need to make sure that we're coming up with the right solution for this intersection. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jacqueline now to discuss some of the traffic statistics.
Thank you, Bob. Traffic at this intersection has grown over 2% per year over the last 5 years. If this rate continues, by the year 2045, we could see as many as 12,000 vehicles per day in the summer. To give you a point of reference, this would be comparable, this 12,000 vehicles per day, to 11th Avenue in Helena or on Broadway in downtown Missoula. If you have traveled through this intersection during the summer months or the holiday weekends, you've probably experienced the traffic delays from the long lines of cars that back up on Montana 83. The backed up traffic on Montana 83 can be frustrating and potentially become dangerous if drivers decide to make risky decisions to avoid the wait. Tricia will now talk to you about the crash statistics that we have seen out in this area.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Between 2003 and 2019, 35 crashes were reported at this intersection. Of these crashes, 22 resulted in property damage only, 12 resulted in injuries, and 1 resulted in a fatality. Of the 35 reported crashes, 43% occurred during the summer months, 37% occurred in the winter months, and 20% occurred during the spring and fall combined. These statistics are an indicator that there are significant safety concerns at the intersection all year long. Crashes are not occurring predominantly because of icy road conditions. Heavy traffic and the absence of traffic control may be a significant factor in the number of crashes experienced at this intersection. April, if you could carry us forward.
Thanks, Tricia. So the Federal Highway Administration has created a process called an Intersection Control Evaluation, or ICE, to provide guidelines for agencies like MDT to identify the best alternatives for improving intersections like Clearwater Junction. So the idea of ICE is to identify and subjectively evaluate all practical and feasible alternatives using uniform and location-specific criteria. So through previous discussions that MDT has had with stakeholders, through the previous open houses, and internally determining the purpose and need for this project, these criteria were identified for evaluating this intersection. A, does the alternative improve safety performance? B, does the alternative improve operational performance? In other words, help with the long queues and improve the movements through the intersection. C, does the alternative consider pedestrians, bicyclists, and other users? D, does the alternative fit in with the given site characteristics and context? And E, does the alternative address the project purpose and need? So only those alternatives that meet all of these ICE criteria will remain in consideration. So in some instances, when using ICE, only 1 or 2 alternatives will actually qualify for continued consideration. So several alternatives were evaluated using these ICE criteria that I just noted. These alternatives included, the first here on the top left, enhanced stop control. This could include a flashing light to increase the visibility of the intersection, additional warning signs, additional turn bays, really any improvements to the current intersection that could be identified. The second is a traffic signal, and this would be the standard full signalized intersection that we're all familiar with. The third is realignment relocation, which would include shifting the rest area truck stop entrance further to the west to kind of unclutter the busy intersection, reduce conflicts. We also considered more aggressive realignments of the actual highways around the current properties and businesses. The next option was called a continuous green T, and this configuration provides separate lanes for westbound through traffic on Highway 200 and another channelized lane for left turning traffic from Highway 83. So the lane receiving traffic from Highway 83 eventually merges into the through traffic downstream. So this concept really only is applicable for intersections with only 3 legs. So it would also require relocating the rest area and the way station entrance. So the last one on this sheet, number 5, is the restricted crossing U-turn, or we call R-cut. So this option has all Highway 83 traffic turn right, and then the left turning traffic makes a U-turn using the designated lanes to travel back in the intended direction. The last alternative is a single lane roundabout, which would provide one-way counterclockwise traffic circulation and a mountable truck apron for larger trucks. So this chart provides a side-by-side comparison of all the alternatives and whether or not each alternative meets the criteria outlined by the intersection control evaluation. So as you can see, the single lane roundabout is the only alternative that meets all of the ICE criteria, making it the preferred alternative for the Clearwater Junction intersection. So Bob, can you discuss the roundabout and the reasons that the other alternatives didn't meet the criteria?
You bet. Thanks, April. Excuse me. A roundabout is the recommended alternative for this intersection. As shown on the slide, the previous slide, the roundabout is the only alternative that meets all of the intersection control evaluation criteria. Not only will a roundabout improve traffic operations, it will also improve overall safety at the intersection. Roundabouts have a proven track record of reducing fatal crashes by more than 90%. They also reduce injury crashes by 70%, and overall we see a crash reduction of 37%. This occurs because roundabouts slow traffic and they reduce the likelihood of those right angle or severe T-bone style crashes. Roundabouts can be constructed to accommodate large vehicles as well. Commercial trucks, farm equipment, trucks pulling campers and boats can all navigate a roundabout. Some of them have to use the mountable truck apron or the colored concrete shown in the middle of the slide with the green arrow pointing towards it here. And one of the other benefits to a roundabout is that it allows traffic to continue to flow during peak and off-peak operations. At this location, if we had a traffic signal, for example, traffic would have to stop on one leg or the other every time it approached the intersection. Highway 83 would be the stop leg, where Highway 200 would be the through movement, if you would. So every car coming down Highway 3 or coming out of the rest area would have to wait for the light to turn green before it could proceed. With a roundabout, there's no need to stop if there's not a traffic coming. So I'd like to spend a minute now talking about the other alternatives and what the fatal flaws would be for each of them. So on the slide in front of you now, you can see the enhanced stop control. This alternative does fit the given characteristics and the context. It doesn't improve the overall traffic safety or the traffic flow, and it also doesn't consider multiple users or address all the needs of the project. The next slide over has the traffic signal. And again, this option does consider multiple users. We're safety concerns aren't addressed with a traffic signal. One of the ways to look at it is that we're still asking traffic to obey the law. It's easy to run a stop sign. It's easy to run a stoplight. It's really hard to run a roundabout. On the far right, here's the relocation realignment. And this option does provide some minimal performance and safety improvements and considers multiple users. However, a realignment would result in out of direction travel and create additional turning movements. It also would require a significant right-of-way acquisition and the general cost to the taxpayers would be much, much greater. Moving on to the next slide, the continuous green T would require relocation of the rest area because of the fact that this is only a three-legged intersection. So the rest area would have to be located into another spot. Also, a continuous green T does not address the eastbound left turn conflicts. And finally, the restricted crossing U-turn does address safety and operational performance, but it would also require additional right-of-way acquisition and construction impacts. It also creates out of direction travel for a high number of the vehicles that would be using the roadway. So I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Christine on how to stay connected with us, how to reach out to us. So Christine.
Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate everyone walking us through that so that we can see why this intersection is being looked at and how those alternatives were evaluated. As promised, here is my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have additional questions or a thought pops up in your mind after we are off of this presentation. I'm happy to address those. And I'm the best way to reach the project team. So if you want to shoot me an email, please feel free to do that. You can also reach us on the project hotline between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if you just want to jump on and take a look at the information about this intersection, you can always visit the project website and get that information there. But at this point, I would like to turn time over to you all to address any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have and get those questions answered. So Katie, do we have any questions?
Thanks, Christine. We just have one thus far. So folks, feel free to add those to the Q&A and we'll address them as they come in. So the first is from Jerry, and he's asking what the general time frame is for this. So I don't know, Jacqueline, might that be a good question for you to start?
Yeah, I can answer this, and if Trisha wants to add on, she can. So with this project, and it's a great question, by the way, we are just wrapping up the study part right now. So now that we know what we're looking at to do with this intersection, we need to develop the schedule for the design of it. So we haven't actually completed any design work yet. So we don't have a hard timeline set right now, but I expect it to be several years before we have a design complete and are able to let it for construction. Trisha, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yes, I can add when projects are in this phase, we're continually working that the funding has already been dedicated to this project. It's just a matter of determining the delivery year, which is in coordination between our program and the district and the consultant finishing the project. So it's a priority for the safety program. And as soon as the design is done, it will be programmed and delivered through construction.
Thanks, Trisha and Jacqueline. I think that answered that question well, but Jerry, if you do have any additional follow-up with that, feel free to add it to the chat. And just so the rest of the team knows, he also followed up by saying that he thinks the roundabout's a great idea for this intersection and thanks the team for their work there. The next question is from Scott, and it's related to speed. So Jacqueline, I might throw this over to you first and see if we need to go from there. But Scott's question is, how will the speed limits coming into the, or excuse me, what would the speed limit look like coming into the roundabout, and how far back might speeds be reduced?
Yeah, I'm gonna punt this one to April actually. Joe, we are keeping the speed limit the same on 83, but there will be some adjustments just like you see on any other roundabout approaching, just to get people to slow down. But April will be able to give you a better idea on exactly where those changes happen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. That's a good question. And as Jacqueline said, they're pretty standard on a roundabout. You'll see that the speeds will reduce from your highway speeds down through a sequential order of speed zones. So we'll go from the highway speed to like 45 down into the 25. And then the roundabout itself does not have a quote speed limit, but it has a design speed or an intended speed of about 15 miles an hour. So the really cool thing about roundabouts is this: if we stuck those signs out there and we just said, drive 45 miles an hour through this intersection, we would have a very, very difficult time getting people to actually slow down and go 45 through the intersection. So when we add a roundabout, it's not really even so much that we put the speed limit signs out there with the roundabout, but what we'll be putting in, I'm sure you've seen this a million times, especially on these rural roundabouts, we have a long entrance coming into the roundabout of curb and gutter. And it'll be a nice curve. It will come in, there'll be a raised median as you come towards it, and then the road will curve. So as you're coming into the roundabout, you're seeing all these things that are telling you slow down, and then the road will curve, and it will kind of force the drivers to actually slow to be able to traverse through the curve in the roadway. And then we have an even tighter curve as we come right into the roundabout center itself. So by the time you get down to the roundabout, you're comfortably probably traveling around 35 to 25 miles an hour. So that is the huge benefit I just mentioned, is we really need people to slow down here, because the biggest problem we've had a lot of complaints about vehicles moving through there super fast. Like maybe a truck will try to pull out from the way station, but the rest of the traffic is going 70 miles an hour, and there's that differential in speed is causing a huge safety issue. So this roundabout, because of the geometrics, not necessarily the signs, will cause all those traffic, all those different vehicles entering from the four legs to be pretty much the same speed, which is really what creates the safety assistance, is the low speeds, and that there's no huge differences between the speeds utilizing and coming into the roundabout. So when you leave the roundabout, again, I'm sure you've seen this, it's more straight, so that you can speed back up quickly. You don't have to go through a series of curves to go out. So really the amount of time that you're going to be in a lower speed limit is very limited. You know, the amount of a couple hundred feet coming in, say 500 feet, 1,000 feet coming in through the roundabout, and then immediately you can start back up, speeding up again. So it really is a very short period of time where you're in the slower speeds, and it's influenced by the geometrics and the design of the roundabout. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please follow back up, and I can cover anything that maybe wasn't quite clear.
Awesome. Thanks so much, April. The next question that we have is somewhat related also to the roundabout. So April, I'll throw this back to you. Andy is wondering how the mountable lane might handle snow.
Okay, so Andy, that's a great question, because we have struggled with this through the years, and every time we build a roundabout, we're modifying it. We're learning and learning and learning as we put these in. But now we've had them in Montana for, gosh, I think it's almost 20 years. So we've learned a lot from these lessons that we've made. Our first initial roundabouts, we had the truck apron was vertical, and we had a lot of struggles with it. And then our truck aprons were 2%. We had a lot of struggles with it. So now what we've come up with, which we really have kind of licked, is a pretty flat curve that goes up onto the roundabout apron. And then the apron is only at a 1% slope. So really what happens is our snow plows just mount that initial apron, and they just drive around it like it was a regular road. They push the snow out. It goes into the travel lanes. They go around again, pushes the snow out again. So they just kind of circle around it until all the snow is pushed to the outside. Our snowplow operators they're getting to be pretty good experts at understanding how to best clean the roundabouts. The good thing about these roundabouts that we've found too is that we struggle finding places for our snowplows to turn around. And so these roundabouts also provide a really fantastic place for them to turn and go back up a route or go down a route when they're needing to pass by again. So quick summary, inside out, they just push the snow out off the apron, out past off the driving lanes and onto the outside.
Awesome. Thanks, April. Great question, Andy. If there's more, feel free to let us know. Scott has more of a timing question. So Jacqueline, I'm going to try again. We'll see if this is a better fit. Scott's wondering if the Clearwater Junction will be constructed at the same time as the Salmon Lake widening project.
I'm going to say there's a pretty good chance that it will not. Salmon Lake has quite a bit of a head start over this project. It's got a couple years of design and development that has occurred, and we still need to complete the design for this project, acquire any right-of-way that's needed for it, get the necessary permits, do the utility relocate. So There's a lot of catch up that would need to happen with this project for it to be ready the same time as Salmon Lake.
Great, thanks, Jacqueline. Scott, let us know if there's anything more on that, but pretty straightforward. Next is a question from Jennifer, and she's wondering how this project might affect the weigh station. So April, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, that's a great question because we don't know the answer yet either. Once we move into the design a little further of the roundabout, then we'll be looking at all the different pieces and parts that are contributing to the congestion in the neighborhood, or in the intersection. And we know that the weigh station is one of those issues. Because we're changing the access, and I hope, Patricia, you jump in here at any point here and correct me if I'm wrong. Because the roundabout will be changing the way that the weigh station is functioning and the way that you can use the weigh station, this project can make revisions to the weigh station and be fundable. And so as we develop the roundabout more, we need to have an analysis done with the input from truck drivers, and the folks that are running the weigh station, and determine if we can find a better way for the roundabout to serve the traffic from the weigh station, from exiting and entering the weigh station. Patricia, I see you popped up, so I'm going to pass that back to you.
Yeah, no, I would echo what you're saying, April. The boat check, the rest area, and the weigh station are key elements of this being a successful project. So that's elements that the consultant will be looking at for us. We did do some preliminary looks at it several years ago, that whatever changes that we made at this intersection, that would be involved. So it's definitely will be looked at and make sure that the trucks can make the turning movements to get back through the roundabout, or however the operations have to change. But any changes to that are a result of this intersection will be funded through our program.
Great, thank you both so much. I think we're set there. One just quick comment from James that I'll float to the group just so everyone's aware, and then we can follow up with him if needed. James is raising the fact that one of the things that drivers in that area notice most is that there's a small hill east of Clearwater Junction that can make visibility difficult. And he's saying, especially with the speeds that people travel on Highway 200, sometimes that can be an area of concern. So something for this group to consider as we're moving forward with the plan development. And we thank you for that, James. The next is a question from Jerry, going back to some of the alternatives that were considered. So I'll throw this to you first, April. Jerry's wondering why a simple speed limit reduction, like something like 45 miles an hour with some speed bumps or things like that, wasn't considered as part of this project.
Thanks, Jerry. So as I mentioned this, I might have Bob pop in at the end because Bob has experience across the whole, western part of Montana, definitely involved in this issue. So Bob, maybe put you on hold if you want to jump in. So as I kind of mentioned before, we struggle a lot with simply putting in speed limit zones. The problem is unless they're enforced, unless you have a reason why people should slow down, we don't see a significant reduction in user speeds when we change the speed limit. We also don't have enough police force or highway patrol force to have a presence in all of these different locations, because there's a shocking amount of locations we have just like this. I can give you any town in Montana, and there's probably a number of them on the outskirts of every town, notwithstanding these rural areas. So what we have found is that if we don't find a way to physically make people slow down, we really have a hard time getting that speed reduction. So you did mention, I think, some warning bumps. And so in some areas, we have put in like transverse rumble strips and some other actual physical barriers to help indicate to people that they need to slow down. And we have had some success with that. The problem is if this is just a regular T rural intersection, some of these items that we would use prior to maybe a stop sign. Like this would be maybe appropriate from Highway 83 coming towards the stop sign, where we're actually asking someone to stop. But when somebody is passing through an area at 70 miles an hour, they're not quite as appropriate to put those transverse rumble strips across. We can't put really warning bumps up because we have a lot of problems with our snow plows. So everything we put in has to be down, or else we'll pretty much just tear it out. So what we've seen with so much research that's been done across the country is that if you want people to slow down, you have to give them some sort of visual and physical indication that requires them to slow. And I'm glad you popped in, Bob, because you have a lot more experiences than with me with this. So I'll jump over to you.
Thanks, April. And you did a great job. You're absolutely right. We have got a lot of places throughout Montana with this type of a challenge. And we simply don't get the complete compliance with speed limit signs. Man, if I could just go put speed limit signs every place up that we have safety concerns, life would be easy and our budget would be in way better shape. But the simple fact is that just putting up a change in speed limits, speed signs, speed zones have not proven to be effective. And in fact, they can create additional hazards by having varying speeds. We end up with part of the people will obey those speed limit signs, but then another portion simply won't. So driver expectation is altered or skewed. And what I mean by that, for in this example, if we have reduced the speed limit on Highway 200 and you're parked on Highway 83 and you need to pull out either in front of, if say you want to pull out and make a right-hand turn to head towards Missoula from Highway 83, you think you have enough room because the last 3 or 4 times you've pulled out, somebody was driving 45. This time you pull out and that person's chosen to ignore the speed limit sign, is doing 70, you can be rear-ended, or if you're making a left, you could be T-boned. So it's just a simple reduction in speed limit. While it appears to be just a quick, easy fix, the compliance isn't there, and therefore the safety isn't addressed, and it actually can increase some safety concerns. So I sure wish we could just do it, because it'd be quick, it'd be easy, it'd be cheap, and we could go on to other things. But it's just been proven time and time again to not work.
Thank you, Bob and April. I've heard so many conversations that I never thought about the point of the rumble strips or some sort of speed bump being above and the snowplow compliant. So that was really interesting for me to hear. It makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that conversation. So with that, we just have one last question, again from Andy with another good one. So wondering, how does eastbound 200 traffic turn into the gas station with a roundabout? And they're wondering if that would result in a left turn immediately after exiting a roundabout. So April, back over to you to address that.
Okay, this is a great question too. So what we try to do is move approaches to businesses or homes a little distance away from the roundabout, mostly because we don't want, say somebody waiting to pull into a business, we don't want them to block up traffic in the roundabout. Also, because exactly what you're talking about, we don't want someone to come through the roundabout, think they're done, they're going to take off, and a car right in front of them turns left. So what we do is we try to provide an area that has raised medium, that's the curb in the middle, so that you can't make that turn immediately after getting out of the roundabout. But just a little ways down, a couple hundred feet, we do provide that. So what happens is that we would let them go through the roundabout. If the traffic warrants it, which I'm going to just kind of put out there probably would, we would have a little left turn bay. You can turn into the turn bay and then turn into the gas station. Another way to deal with it is just simply go through the roundabout, go onto Highway 3 North, and then you're taking a right turn into the roundabout, which is much simpler. What we find is that people get very adept at finding the easiest way. So for example, if it's really hard right now to take a left out of the gas station onto 200 to go eastbound, that can be tough with all the different traffic moving in all the different directions. Well, it might be easier to take a right onto Highway 200, go around the roundabout, and then head out back to the east. And we find people they figure it out really quick when you have a roundabout, that it really takes away having to take a left turn. You can do almost anything. If there is an approach on each side of this roundabout, you really can get anywhere you want in this intersection by taking a right turn, and then, utilizing the roundabout to get you where you need to go. So again, we'll probably provide a left turn bay and turn into it off of Highway 200, but you could also pull out off of Highway 200, take a right, go around the roundabout, and then proceed in your right direction. So if that answers your question, I hope it does. Oh, it looks like Bob wants to pop in. So Bob.
Yeah, I did want to point out that we've got interestingly enough, we've got a few of the intersections of concern like this in Western Montana. And at least 3 of them I can think of all have gas stations on the corner. I guess where 2 major roads intersect is a prime spot for a gas station, but it does present some challenges for us. The one concern that we do have that April didn't talk about with that allowing a left turn through the median, that is generally a safe maneuver to make people can see the traffic coming at them. On the flip side though is that how do we get people to not make an incorrect maneuver out, trying to go through the wrong way through that in splot, if you will. So that's a challenge that we have to face, and kind of just continue to stay involved with the project with us on this. And we'll keep everybody updated as we move forward with what our design looks like.
Thanks, Bob. And I'm going to keep you on the line. So Andy followed up asking if there are any existing examples that you could share. So the question is, talk about existing roundabouts in Western Montana. Can you share where those examples are?
So you bet. We've got quite a few examples in Western Montana. We just finished the construction of one on Highway 2 west of Kalispell at the Dern and Spring Creek Road. Similar to this, it's on Highway 2 outside of Kalispell. We're in the process of the design of one a little further west on Highway 2 west of Kalispell out by Batavia. We've got 3 of them at exit ramps in Missoula. Orange Street has one, Van Buren has 2. There's one on Highway 2 in Browning, pretty close to Western Montana, also on Highway 2, has a tremendous amount of traffic going through it on the west edge of Browning. Trying to think, the Kalispell bypass has several roundabouts on it. We just took one off of the main line, which was one of the first roundabouts installed in Montana of the earlier design that April talked about, and we replaced it with an overpass and an exit on-off ramp interchange. But it's similar to those of you that travel into Missoula, the Van Buren Street intersection where we have the roundabouts at the bottoms of the on and off ramps. So there's also another roundabout further south on what they call the East Side Highway and down in Bitterroot. That is on at a highway location similar to this. Trying to think of where else. There's a couple others on the outskirts of Missoula. There's 8 or 10 of them in Billings. So we've got a lot of roundabouts scattered throughout Montana.
Thanks, Bob. And Andy, if you need any more information on some of those examples or plans, certainly follow up with Christine. There she goes, with Christine, and we can get that back over to you. And speaking of Christine, those are all the questions that I see in the Q&A. So maybe I will turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Katie. And thank you to all of our project team who took time to be here and answer those questions. And I really appreciate our attendees who had such thoughtful comments and questions. We know that this area is important to a lot of residents, and it's an area that's traveled by a lot of folks who live in Montana, drive through that area. So we're aware that this is a concern for residents and visitors, and we really appreciate your time in joining us today and for your thoughtful comments and questions. Again, please reach out if you have any additional questions or concerns that pop up later, we're happy to address those. Again, you can reach me via email at Christine@bigskypublicrelations.com, or give us a call on the project hotline at 406-207-4484, or visit the Clearwater Junction intersection project webpage for any additional information that may not warrant a question. But we are happy to hear from you. Your comments and concerns are an important piece of this project. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And if you're interested, please join us later this afternoon in Sealy Lake. And at our in-person open house that'll take place at the Sealy Lake Community Foundation from 4:30 to 7 this evening. Looks like Jennifer had a question about how truck drivers get a hold of us. Anyone from a trucking association that we're in regular contact with is welcome to reach out to me, and we'd be happy to have a discussion with them in the same manner. So via email or by the hotline, we'd love to hear from our trucking association and those truck drivers in Montana. So thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a lovely afternoon.